Welcome to Pub Sports Radio's Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. Thursday, October 15th. You can tune into this show live every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Good to be back with you for another edition of the show. It's week 6 already in the NFL, if you can believe that. It's going by fast, as it always seems to. It felt like we were kicking off week 1 just days ago, and now we're already in week 6 of the season. And we've got a lot of things to sift through. It's like, when a hurricane or a tornado bears down on a town, and then you got to sift through all the damage, sift through all the rubble, to get past the destruction. It's kind of like what we're doing with the NFL week in and week out with these injury reports. We're now seeing multiple teams having players contract COVID-19 and the coronavirus on a weekly basis. That is becoming more and more of an issue. It seems like the infiltration, if you will, of the coronavirus within the National Football League, it's getting bigger and stronger, not smaller, as the weeks go on. So it is absolutely a league right now where you've just got to really do your best to stay on top of things every single day as things continue to keep changing. We'll do our best to do that. For the first time since we started doing this Ian Cameron Football Frenzy show, we have no Thursday night football game to break down. So everything is going to be Sunday and Monday. So let's get to it. As always, we're going to start with the game that is at the top of the rotation. Keep in mind, we have 2 games that have been postponed this weekend, the Jets and the Chargers, as well as the Dolphins and the Broncos, because they were originally scheduled. However, those teams are playing. They're just playing different opponents this weekend. You've got the Jets now playing the Dolphins on Sunday, and you've got the Broncos playing the Patriots, a game that has been postponed a couple of times now. They'll finally play each other on Sunday in Foxborough. So let's get into it. We'll start at the top of the rotation, as we always do. The Chicago Bears and the Carolina Panthers. Carolina, 1.5 point favorites here at home. The total 44.5, 45 in this game. Let's give Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers so much credit, because this was not the offseason for a new coach with new coordinators and new schemes and a new quarterback, trying to integrate all of that on the fly with no preseason and limited training camp. This was the season for a team in the spot Carolina was in coming into the season. This was supposed to be a season where you're supposed to fall flat on your face in a situation like this, with new pieces all around, new coaching staff, new systems, and somehow, some way, Matt Rule and his coaching staff, who deserve a ton of credit for this, have pulled it together. And now Carolina enters this game 3 straight wins, 3 straight point spread covers, and they beat some solid teams. Okay, Atlanta on Sunday, obviously not a solid team, but you beat the Chargers, which was a pretty solid win for this Carolina team. That was impressive in my mind. So you look at the way this team has played, Carolina. To me, it's a team that I think is continuing to improve week in and week out. I'm impressed with what I'm seeing from the offense with Teddy Bridgewater. He's not making a ton of mistakes. They're keeping the offense balanced. And Mike Davis has proven once again that for as great as Christian McCaffrey, and Christian McCaffrey's an elite running back, there's no question. I'm not going to try to spin it like he's not. He is. He's that good. But so many times we see that the running back is often an interchangeable part. It takes a real special running back once in a lifetime to be that running back where, okay, all of a sudden this guy's out. You're not going to be able to run the football. What goes into a good ground game? The running back is got to be good, but the offensive line has to be able to run block for that running back. And they've got to be able to scheme properly and be able to, as I mentioned, block properly. And Carolina's been able to do that, even with Mike Davis taking over, getting all the reps at the running back spot. They've still been able to run the football very effectively. I think one of the things that's been pleasant to see with the Carolina Panthers lately has been their defense. It has improved, this Carolina Panthers defense, as the season's gone on, which has been a defense that coming into the season, a lot of new faces on that side of the ball, a secondary that lost their, a couple of starting corners from last year, but they're getting better each week. I like what I'm seeing from Carolina. Problem is they suffered a couple of key injuries on defense last week. Kayvon Short just being a huge loss for them, out for the season now due to injury, suffered last week, shoulder injury. So Kayvon Short is done for the season, a big defensive tackle for the Panthers. They're going to miss him on that D-line. Gross Matos, who has been a pretty good pass rusher for this team, he suffered an ankle injury last week. He's questionable for Sunday against Chicago. So you got some key injuries all of a sudden on the defensive side of the football for Carolina. So a little bit concerning here. Chicago bounced back from a horrible offensive showing against Indianapolis. It was an ugly day for Nick Foles and that Bears offense. It wasn't exactly a Picasso or a Rembrandt from the Chicago Bears offense last Thursday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the Chicago Bears did enough to get the job done and squeak out a win against the Bucs, rely on their defense as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they fare here, because you've got a team that right now is a little bit suspect on offense. Carolina coming into the season, at least for me, was very, very suspect on defense. So it's going to be an interesting situation here with what are we going to get from this Carolina defense? We've seen, as I mentioned, progression from this team on the defensive side of the football throughout the season. That's been impressive to see. Can they keep it going here against Chicago? When you look at it, they faced Justin Herbert, the Chargers. They faced Tom Brady and the Bucs. They faced Matt Ryan and the Falcons last week. I mean, this Carolina team has faced some better offenses and quarterbacks, let's put it that way, than probably what they're going to see with Chicago here. I'm buying right now on this Carolina Panthers team. I cashed a ticket with them last week against Atlanta. They were 2-point underdogs. They won that game outright last week against the Falcons. I like what I'm seeing and the trajectory from this team right now. The problem, this is the first week they're favored this season. They've been a dog every single week to this point in the season. This is the first time that they're going to be favored. So we'll see if they can handle it. Remember, being an underdog is one thing, and cashing tickets ATS as a dog is one thing. Being able to do it when you're now favored is another. But at least at anything less than a field goal, and it looked like early in the week when Carolina was 2.5, looked like it was moving to 3. Then these injuries started to get announced for Carolina going into this game, and all of a sudden we've seen some Chicago money come in. But I don't want the Bears here. I'm believing in what I'm seeing from this Carolina team right now. And Matt Rule is looking like a coach that, he had success at Temple, rebuilt that program, got them to be a contender in that AAC conference, rebuilt Baylor from a disastrous mess that he inherited after the Art Briles era ended in shambles. And he got that team to the Big 12 championship game last year. He just finds a way to get these teams to improve and get better over time. It would be Carolina for me in this game at the short home favorite price. Again, they're only 1.5 now in most spots. Even with the defensive injuries, Chicago, the kind of team that can take advantage. I've got to see it before I believe it. So for me, if I'm betting this game, Carolina, I've got Carolina on the short list circled as a potential bet. I haven't decided to pull the trigger yet, but it's Carolina or pass for me in that game. It was a very good NFL week for me last week, 7-4 with the subscriber card in the NFL last week. Again, if you want to get on board with that, you can email bobano350@gmail.com. It's just $75 a month, all sports. It's a drop in the bucket. Sites and other cappers charge $300 a month for all sports. It's highway robbery. For me, it's a affordable quality service for $75 a month. It's much more affordable. So if you were interested, and we're on a good NFL and college run so far in football, send an email to bobano350@gmail.com. All right, let's move on. Detroit, Jacksonville. We've got Detroit 3-point favorites here on the road, 54.5, 55 the total in this game. This is just an ugly game all around. It's two teams I would rather bet against than bet on. I don't trust the Detroit Lions laying points, not one bit. But when you see this Jacksonville team, there's a lot of problems with Jacksonville. They can't run the football. It's one-dimensional. Gardner Minshew's pretty much got to do everything throwing the football for this Jaguars team. Their defense is absolutely hideous right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't trust them to get stops. The one thing the Lions can do is move the football with Matt Stafford and company, with a good receiving core with Amendola and Marvin Jones and TJ Hawkinson. And now they have Kenny Golladay back. So this is definitely a game where I think the Lions definitely can move the football and put up points. I don't know what to expect from their defense, but I do like their offense in this game. The Lions did move the ball against the Saints, even though they lost that game. They had success offensively in the week before, the one win they've had this season against Arizona. I'll tell you the one bet that interests me in this game. I don't know if Detroit can shut down Jacksonville, but they might, because Jacksonville's offense isn't quite, Drew Brees and the Saints, Kyler Murray in Arizona, Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I mean, you look at Detroit's schedule, they've been miserable defensively. I'm not letting them off the hook, and I'm not letting Matt Patricia off the hook for just a sieve defense that the Detroit Lions have had this season. But this is not the same dynamic offense on paper this week with Jacksonville for them that they've seen in previous weeks earlier this season. So to me, if the Lions are going to have a better defensive showing, this could be the game where we see it. I'd rather take that matchup out of the equation. I don't want to have to worry about Jacksonville offense versus Detroit defense, because I honestly don't know who's going to win that matchup. But I'm pretty confident the Detroit Lions offense can win the matchup against the Jacksonville defense, which again hasn't stopped anybody so far this season. You look at yards per play allowed. You look at just being gashed not only on the ground but through the air. I think they've got a miserable secondary. Now, Jalen Ramsey, of course, they parted ways with a while back, and really that's when it began that this Jacksonville pass defense really nosedived and all of a sudden couldn't get stop any sort of potent, capable passing attack. So the Detroit Lions receivers, I think, have it in them to have a big day here against a bad secondary. I like the Detroit Lion team total over. You guys know my pal, Donnie, right side, Donnie Seymour. Of course, I used to do a lot of shows with him. I still talk to him frequently on Twitter. He's a big team totals guy. I don't do as much with team totals. In fact, I'm very occasional team totals better. Most of my bets in NFL football are side total and props, not necessarily team total, but the Lion team total over, that's the way I would go in this game for sure. I don't want to worry about, what Detroit's suspect defense does against Jacksonville. I do have a thought that they can play better and hang in there. This is a bit of a step down in class for their defense against Minshew and the Jaguar offense, but I'm pretty confident that Matt Stafford and the Lions offense can move the football with a great deal of success and put up points. So the bet that stands out for me in this game here is Detroit's team total to go over Lions Jaguars. Other than that, I'm not going to have much on it, side or total. The team total for the Lions over, though, does interest me. Atlanta, Minnesota. Minnesota 4-point favorites here, 54.5 the total. I would lay the points if I had to in this game. Look, I know it was a brutal loss for Minnesota. I mean, they led most of that game against Seattle. They had, I can't criticize Mike Zimmer for going for it on fourth down, in the fourth quarter last week. I can't, because even, you kick the field goal, you're still going to allow Wilson a chance to get you. I mean, it's just you're stuck there, and to me, it's more blame on you got to get a yard. Okay, you got to get that first down. You don't blame the coaching decision to go for it as much as you blame, could you just block to get one freaking yard? That falls on the offensive line. That's where the blame should be. All you need is 1 yard. You should be able to get it in a spot where you can close out the game and go ahead and win it. And sure enough, they don't get it. You give Russell Wilson another opportunity, and usually when that happens, you give Russell Wilson a 9th life. He's going to end up making the most of it, and that's exactly what happened last week for the Seahawks against Minnesota. Just an absolutely horrendous loss for Minnesota last week. They played a pretty solid game, though. I mean, but you look at some of these tough losses. I mean, 1-point loss to Tennessee a few weeks ago, and then the Seattle game, and they outgained the Seahawks too. I mean, they probably should have won that football game last week, but again, coulda, woulda, shoulda, didn't. But, I don't want Atlanta. I mean, I know they fired Dan Quinn, and with Houston last week, I mentioned this on the show, and I liked Houston against Jacksonville last week. I got a sense that Houston was going to rally around Romeo Crennel, that this was going to be a happier, more excited, more enthusiastic team without Bill O'Brien there. I'm not sure that's the case with Atlanta with Dan Quinn. I don't think there was that mutual discord between Dan Quinn and the players like there was with Bill O'Brien and the Houston Texans. And for Atlanta, they're now 0-5. they're in a huge hole. They're not going anywhere. We're already hearing that Atlanta had a staff member test positive for COVID-19. There's now people saying that Atlanta might get, lackadaisical. And some of these teams that are losing and well out of it may get lackadaisical in terms of the health restrictions and taking those seriously, the health precautions and the health recommendations, to distance and masks and all that. And that might be something that creeps in for the Atlanta Falcons here moving forward. But the bottom line is, we could have Raheem Morris taking over as the interim coach here for the Atlanta Falcons. They're 0-5, and they thought they could still be a pretty good football team this year. With Houston, not only did they get rid of a coach and a GM that had clearly fallen out of favor with the players, but they were only 0-4 going into that game against Jacksonville last week. And there's probably still some kind of sentiment with the Texans that, hey, we can still maybe try to make a run at the playoffs. It's going to be tough. The odds are against us. But if we can still maybe make a run for the playoffs here, I don't get that sense from Atlanta, that they're in that same position, that all of a sudden they think, wow, we're going to be able to go on a run here and make the playoffs. I don't see that. Some coaching changes I see bet on for the team after the coaching change, like with Houston last week. I'm not sure I see that with the Atlanta Falcons here. Now, you do have to lay 4. It's not like Minnesota has a great defense this year compared to where it's been in years past. The pass rush has lacked. The secondary's been burned. It's been a very young, youthful, inexperienced secondary compared to years past. But there's no way I can back Atlanta. No, can't do it. Minnesota for me if I'm getting involved in that game minus the 4. Houston, Tennessee, AFC South battle. Just talked about the Texans. We'll talk about them now against the Titans, the undefeated Tennessee Titans off a very impressive win against the previously undefeated Buffalo Bills in that Tuesday night game. Tennessee, 3.5 point favorites here, depending on which book you're looking at. The total 53 in this game. Give Tennessee credit. I mean, if you're a Miami Dolphins fan, you're probably looking at Ryan Tannehill week in and week out saying, we had that guy at one time. Why the hell did it not work? I mean, that's honestly what you got to be thinking. And I know that's what some of them are thinking because I know some Dolphin fans that live in my area. And they're saying the same thing. We had this guy. We drafted this guy. We thought he was going to be our franchise quarterback, and it never worked. He had injury problems. The offense never surrounded him with a good offensive line, never surrounded him with enough skill position talent, never had good offensive coaching, going back to, of course, that Nimrod, that numbnuts. Adam Gase was one of the coaches that, as many coaches that have failed here in Miami in recent seasons. All kinds of issues with Tannehill. It didn't work. He gets out of Miami, goes to Tennessee, replaces Marcus Mariota last year after Mariota gets benched, and he has taken that opportunity and absolutely run with it. I mean, he's been excellent. There's nothing you can say other than that. He has been excellent since becoming the starting quarterback here for the Titans midway through last season. He's carried it over into this year. He was very good again against the Bills on Tuesday, relying on Derrick Henry, but making plays in the game, making plays running the football. Tannehill's not thought of as a Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott type that can run with the football, make plays when the pocket breaks down. He's got underrated, under the radar speed. He's not a speed demon by any stretch. He's not a burner by any stretch of the imagination. But when Ryan Tannehill has to make a play or two with his feet, he's able to do that. So give him credit. Give the Titans offense credit. No Corey Davis and Adam Humphries for them either at receiver on Tuesday against the Bills. But A.J. Brown came back, made a huge difference for the Tennessee Titans offense. Jonnu Smith has been good. There's still some weapons here for this Tennessee team. They were extremely impressive in that 42-16 win. The fact they only had 2 practices in over 2 weeks and played like that against the Bills, it was extremely impressive, no question. They were benefited, they benefited, I should say, by a +3 turnover margin against the Bills. So they did force some turnovers. I think the box score looks a little closer than the final score would indicate in that Tennessee Buffalo game, but you give them credit. Here's the issue, though. You didn't practice more than twice for a couple of weeks. You had this terrific performance in a spot where you've got an undefeated Bills team coming in. You're played Tuesday, and now you're playing Sunday. That is a negative. That has to be a negative for the Tennessee Titans going into this game. This is not just your Monday Night Football to Sunday short week. This is a day later. You played Tuesday, and now you're playing Sunday. At least you're not traveling. This game is in Tennessee. But I don't know if I love this situation or scheduling spot one bit for the Tennessee Titans going into this game. On the flip side, when it comes to the Houston Texans, I'm kind of interested in riding this Romeo Crennel wave for as long as it takes me. You saw the first game after Bill O'Brien got fired last week against Jacksonville. They started off slowly, first quarter and a half. You were still seeing some Houston mistakes, turnovers, penalties. But boy, from the tail end of the first half and then throughout the entire second half of that game against Jacksonville last week, Houston dominated. They were great on both sides of the ball. Deshaun Watson got things going in the passing game. They even ran the football better than they have throughout the early part of the season. And they pretty much put the clamps down on Jacksonville's offense for the majority of the last 30 minutes of that game. So much better performance from Houston. And there is no doubt, if you see every quote and hear and watch every interview with a Texan player since Bill O'Brien's got fired, the enthusiasm, you're excited to get back on the field, to practice, to play games now. It's all come back for this Houston team. This is not an easy game for Tennessee. I don't love the spot for them. Look, they're laying 3, but so many of these games prior to the Bills win were close, tight games. Grabbing the field goal is what I'd be interested in here in this game with the Tennessee Titans. You can get 3 with them, even 3.5 at Pinnacle and Bet Online. If you make sure you try to shop around, get the 3.5. If you like Houston, and I do in this game, there's no reason not to get 3.5. Don't settle for 3. Get 3.5. It's very important. Just like it's very important to get multiple sportsbook accounts out there so that you can always ensure that you're getting the best possible number on each wager you make. But I like Houston here, plus the points in this game against Tennessee. I'm going to ride this Romeo Crennel wave at least for one more week. And this to me is one of those situations, as I mentioned a minute ago, where I think the coaching change just completely cleanses the room and brings a breath of fresh air for this Texans team moving forward. I failed to mention everybody in the chat. I just want to acknowledge you. I don't have the chat open on my screen right now because I've got a million windows. It slows down the computer processing speed in the background if I've got too many windows open. So I don't have the YouTube chat open, but I can see in the StreamYard page that's open, everybody that's chimed in and said hello. Jansen, thank you. You're always in the chat. Birdie as well. A loyal viewer every Thursday here of the Ian Cameron Football Frenzy. Guillermo Zertucci, how are you, Guillermo? Good to see you as well. Hope you're enjoying the show, and hopefully we can provide you with winners. Again, last week, I go through every game. I either say I'm considering betting it or I have bet it, but you're at least going to know which direction I'm looking every Thursday when we're doing this show. And I know the majority of the leans last week did very well. They must have, because the official card for me was 7-4 in the NFL last Sunday, and hopefully it's going to be another good, solid, profitable week in the NFL. I can almost assure you, Houston's going to be on my card somehow, some way here in this game, getting 3.5. I like the Texans here. I like the enthusiasm. I like the spirit. Let's be honest, this team had more talent than the 0-4 record showed. No question about that. And I think now they're going to finally start playing. They're going to be coached better. They're going to be prepared better. You can see them having fun in the locker room yesterday after the win against Jacksonville with Romeo Crennel. It was an absolutely it was a fun scene in the Texans locker room. So you can tell they're having more fun playing football, and I think they're going to perform better as a result as well. All right, let's move on to the next game here. Washington football team, New York Giants. The Giants 2.5 3-point favorites, 42.5, 43 the total. This Joe Judge hire, by the way, this is looking like an unmitigated disaster for the New York Giants. I've not been one bit impressed with Joe Judge decision-wise, getting his team ready. There's too many penalties by this Giants team, mistakes. I don't think the offensive play calling has been all that great for New York, which explains why their offense struggled. Although last week they finally did get some offense going, but I think that was more a product of a piss-poor Dallas Cowboys defense that hasn't been able to stop anybody this season. I think that was more a product of it than anything they did. But nevertheless, I mean, the Giants just shoot themselves in the foot. They actually look like they have a chance to win that game and maybe get a huge victory for themselves against Dallas. And sure enough, what do? They give up the big pass play. Not to Dak Prescott, by the way, to Andy Dalton, who, of course, came in to the game for an injured Dak Prescott, who, of course, now is out for the season with that ankle injury. Andy Dalton just with the big pass play. Giants can't get a stop. Puts them at Dallas in position for the Greg Zuerlein game-winning field goal, which is good. And just another crippling loss for this Giants team. 0-5 now on the season. Team going nowhere. A team with a coach from day one. This hire did not impress me one bit. There's definitely problems with this Giants team. Their defense can't get stops when they need it. The defense has had trouble all year. And Daniel Jones, we've got to start talking about him a little bit. He's regressing big time. He has definitely, like, he gave you little glimpses last year that, wow, what a good throw. Wow, he got out of the pocket and ran for a first down. What a nice play he made there. You know, he was doing some of these things that was really impressing you and gave you hope, gave you belief, gave you confidence. As a Giants fan, maybe this is a guy that's going to be a really good quarterback for you for many years to come. But he is missing open receivers. He's hanging onto the football too long, and it's resulting in sacks. And more importantly, it's resulting in fumbles. This guy's ball security is awful, Like, there have been quarterbacks I've seen in the past that have had trouble hanging onto the football. This guy treats the football like a hand grenade. He wants no part of it. You know, it's like as soon as he gets, someone breathes on him. Someone just, very gently bumps his arm when he's got the ball in his hand. The ball flies out. You know, he has got to find a way. And that's another thing about my criticism with Joe Judge. It's up to the coaching staff to work with Daniel Jones and say, here, Daniel, this is what you got to do. Clutch the ball closer to your body so it doesn't get knocked out half the time, so that you can actually keep the possession, so that at least if we're stopped and it brings up fourth down, at least we're going to be able to punt and not put our defense in a bad spot on the field, terrible field position, because you fumble on your own 20-yard line, which has happened multiple times this year for Daniel Jones here with the New York Giants. So, you know, that's up to the coaching staff to work with him. It's like they haven't even addressed the thing because it keeps happening every single week. You know, Giants, to me, just not a whole lot to like here. Washington, it's like a pick your poison game for me, but I'll be honest with you. Two bad teams, I don't lay points. It would be Washington football team for me at the +3 number. You know, if I'm going to endorse anything in this game, it'll be back to Kyle Allen at quarterback here for Washington. It looks like he's going to be good to go on Sunday. Remember, he got injured last week in the game against the LA Rams, which of course brought in Alex Smith for his first action as a starting or as a quarterback in an NFL game in years. That was a great scene, by the way, to see that Alex Smith. Now, it wasn't a great showing for him, but that's not even the story. The story is this guy had a debilitating injury that almost prevented him from walking again. That's how serious it was. Never mind not playing again, maybe never walking again. That's how serious the injury looked at the onset for Alex Smith, that could be a potential reality for him. And the fact that he came all the way back from that, persevered, and you have to be a mentally tough son of a gun to just find your way back onto a football field after that kind of injury. You got to tip your cap to Alex Smith. And just to see him playing in that game last week against the Rams was a really phenomenal thing to see. And it was great to see him back on a football field and in game action, considering everything he's gone through the last couple of years. Nevertheless, they've already announced Washington. It will be Kyle Allen in this game. Kyle Allen's capable. He really is. I mean, he got them a touchdown drive before he got injured against the Rams last week. To me, Washington +3. I can't lay points with the Giants. They're winless. Their defense can't stop anybody. Their offense is helter-skelter. I don't think their run game without Saquon Barkley has gotten anything consistently going and generated. And the one thing Washington can do is get some pressure, especially with Chase Young back in the fold on that defensive line. And it's not like the Giants' offensive line has been any good this season. Hell, the Giants' offensive line hasn't been any good for 3-4 years now. I'm not going to say I'm going to bet it, but I'm mildly interested. Let's put it that way. Mildly interested in Washington here, +3 against the New York Giants. The key for me with backing Washington, as long as I don't have to see Dwayne Haskins as the starting quarterback, then I get a little more interested in terms of betting them, and that's the case here. Dwayne Haskins has been that bad. I don't blame Ron Rivera and the Washington coaching staff one bit for sticking with Kyle Allen. Cleveland, Pittsburgh. We've got Pittsburgh 3-point favorites here, 3.5 in some spots. The total 51 in this game. Great matchup here. You've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have certainly gotten off to a strong start this season. 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread. Cleveland 4-1 straight up, 3-2 against the spread. Two good teams, two teams playing good football right now. You got to give both of them credit. The Steelers, week by week, and I think I talked about the Steeler offense a little bit last week. Big Ben and the offense are getting better, I think, each and every week. He's getting more comfortable. The more games under Ben Roethlisberger's belt, I think the more comfortable he's going to get. He seems to be getting some of that rhythm back, timing again with his receivers. That doesn't get there in just 1 or 2 games when you have not played football for as long as Ben did. And now he's starting to get that rapport again with his receivers. And we are seeing maybe a star receiver in the making in my fellow Canadian. And I'm proud as hell of this guy from British Columbia, beautiful British Columbia, Chase Claypool. What a freaking day for Chase Claypool last Sunday. 4 touchdowns in a game. Are you kidding me? Awesome job by him. He has got great speed in the open field, incredible hands, big body, hard to, take a football away from him in one-on-one coverage. He is looking like a big-time target moving forward. And now all of a sudden you pair him with Juju Smith-Schuster, and all of a sudden you've got a nice little 1-2 tandem in the passing game for Ben Roethlisberger here with this Pittsburgh Steelers team. The offense is getting better, I find, each week for the Steelers. 38 points last week, 28 points against Houston. They've actually scored 26-plus points in all 4 games this season, but, the last 2, 28, big yardage against Houston, and then last week they shredded the Eagles, 38 points, really taking advantage of that Eagles defense. This Pittsburgh offense is getting better week in and week out. I think they're going to pose problems here for Cleveland's defense. This secondary for the Browns ain't any good. I know they beat Indianapolis last week, but again, Greedy Williams is gone for the season. They've had injuries galore from the beginning of the year in the secondary, and we're finding out with the Browns, if Myles Garrett and the pass rush does not get to the quarterback, there are wide open receivers down the field against this Cleveland Browns pass defense right now. And that's going to be critical. Garrett and the pass rush for the Browns, it's going to have to harass and get in there on Ben Roethlisberger, because if he's going to have the time to throw the football, they're going to do damage, because I've not seen a great Brown secondary so far this season. On the flip side, while I do have questions about Cleveland's secondary, their pass rush is good, but I have questions about their secondary. Their offense has been really, really good the last couple weeks. The Dallas game, I was saying to myself, you know what, Self? That was a bad Dallas defense. Cleveland did play great on offense that game. Baker Mayfield was good. They ran the football. Even with Nick Chubb injured, Kareem Hunt stepped up, ran the football well. Dearness Johnson has even spelled him and produced as well, running the football. The offensive line's been good. Baker Mayfield is finding chemistry with Jarvis Landry and especially Odell Beckham. He's finally starting to look like the elite receiver we think talent-wise he can be when he's focused, when he's mentally checked in, when he's not, causing distractions. When he's focused and locked in, Odell Beckham can be as good a receiver as anybody in the National Football League. And we're seeing that right now with him, with Baker Mayfield and this Cleveland offense. They've got things going in the passing game. They're going up against a really good Pittsburgh defense. But if you scratch a little bit beneath the surface here and really investigate, how good is Pittsburgh's defense? Is it an elite defense? Is it a good defense? Is it a okay defense? Or is this a defense that's all smoke and mirrors so far? I'd like to hear what the chat says actually about that, if anyone has any comments. What do you guys think of this Pittsburgh defense? I thought coming into the season they'd be a good defense. I never once thought of them as an elite defense. I thought they could be a good defense. But here's the concern I've got for Pittsburgh's defense. Look at the schedule so far. The Giants with Daniel Jones in week 1, not much of an offense. They played Denver when Drew Lock got injured in that game, and they had to go to Jeff Driscoll the rest of the way. Houston with Deshaun Watson, okay, pretty good offense, and they played pretty well in that game. And Philadelphia, offensive line issues. They have a very weak wide receiving core, and we saw the Steelers struggle. All of a sudden, this Travis Fulgham, who has rarely gotten any sort of significant playing time with the Eagles, just absolutely lights up the Steeler defense last week for Philadelphia. So the more I watch the Steeler defense, the more I think they're an okay, good defense. They're not an elite defense. And when you compare Cleveland's offense, the way they've played the last few weeks, to the Giants, Denver, Houston, and Philly offenses that Pittsburgh has played in each of their first 4 games, this is the best offense they've played. I think that is a pretty easy thing to say right now, that this is going to be the best offense that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense has played so far this season. Let's see if they're able to handle it. There is some interesting news about Beckham, though. As much as I'm praising him, Kevin Stefanski this morning in his press conference, announced that Odell Beckham's been sent home because of an illness. We don't know if this is just a regular illness or if it's a COVID-19 infection. We don't know. And that's the thing. Whenever you hear illness now, you have to separate the two. Is this like a normal illness, like a flu, or he's got a fever or something, or is this COVID-19? We don't know that. But what we do know is Odell Beckham wasn't with the team today, and now his status for Sunday is up in the air, according to the head coach Kevin Stefanski. He's holding out hope that Odell Beckham is available and will be able to play on Sunday against Pittsburgh, but definitely that is more in doubt now with the illness that has all of a sudden occurred here for Odell Beckham. And it's a shame because I really, really like the total going over in this game, and I still do. In fact, I'm sure this will be a bet of mine in some fashion. I don't know how strong yet, but I think the Beckham news is going to play into that. I do think the over's in play here in this game, 51. We're all of a sudden seeing the Steelers. They played an under against the Giants, but the Denver game slipped over the total. Houston, it was 28-21. That game went over the total. You had 67 points in the game against Philadelphia last week. It flew over the total with ease. And again, Pittsburgh's offense is getting better each week. The defense, this is their best offense they've played so far this season, the Cleveland Browns. And the more I look at Pittsburgh's defense, especially the way they played against Philly, they gave up some big plays. They gave up a big run to Miles Sanders. If you can give up a big run to Miles Sanders and a patchwork Eagles offensive line, what could Kareem Hunt do against this defense? What can some of these receivers do for Cleveland against this Pittsburgh defense when Travis Fulgham just goes nuts on them last week? So I've got concerns in this matchup for Pittsburgh's defense, which I don't think is quite as good as I think a lot of people thought coming into the season. So I like the game over the total. I could have made a case for Cleveland plus the points when it was 4.5, 4, even 3.5, but a lot of the values come out of that, and they never win in Pittsburgh. Let's also keep that in mind. I know Cleveland's been a very popular side in the betting markets this week. They've taken the money. They haven't won in Pittsburgh since Tim Couch was their quarterback, and that was like 17, 18 years ago. All right? That's the last time the Cleveland Browns won a game in Pittsburgh. So this has been a house of horrors, the ketchup bottle, as I like to call it, Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. I'm definitely going to be in on the over here in this game in some form, 51. Probably even if Beckham doesn't play, I am going to get involved over the total of 51. From a side perspective, not going to play it either way. Just be careful that if you're betting Cleveland now that it's down to 3.5, 3, they have just not been able to get out of their own way in Pittsburgh. And that is a historical track record that spells doom for them. And Pittsburgh's found a way to win every game so far. And now that they're only laying 3.5, not enough points for me to back Cleveland, even though I leaned to Cleveland at the opener. Not so much now at 3.5. Baltimore, Philadelphia. We've got Baltimore 7.5 point favorites, 47.5, 48 the total in this game. Baltimore, it'll look last week, wow, they dominated Cincinnati. And I had Cincinnati last week. And that's why, and you know me, I'm going to absolutely give you, I'm going to mention games I win with, games I lose with. That's the way it is. You're going to get me being, transparent, telling it like it is. And yeah, I had the Cincinnati Bengals last week, plus 14, 13 in that range. I actually got a 14 at 5 dimes with the Cincinnati Bengals last week. and I watched that game. Baltimore was not very good in the game. Their offense sputtered. Their defense, Cincinnati, was moving the ball. Multiple drives into Baltimore territory, and then bam, turnover. Bam, turnover. Sack fumble, turnover, mistake, penalty. Every single time Cincinnati was knocking on the door to score points against Baltimore, they shot themselves in the foot. And they were absolutely brutal. They beat themselves. I think if Cincinnati is even somewhat decent in that game last Sunday, they have a chance to cover that number. Because I don't think Baltimore was all that spectacular last week. And now that's 2 weeks in a row against bottom-tier teams that aren't going to be making the playoffs, Cincinnati and Washington, where Baltimore's looked okay, but they haven't looked dominant. They didn't necessarily look dominant for the entire game against Washington after they lost to Kansas City. And I think the same thing last week. It'll show they look dominant in the final score, but a lot of that was, defensive touchdowns, a terrible offensive line for Cincinnati that had Joe Burrow getting pulverized in that game. It was not a fluid performance from Baltimore, and Philadelphia is at least a step up from Cincinnati and from Washington. And Philadelphia, they beat San Francisco, albeit an injury-riddled 49ers team. They hung in there, competed with an undefeated Steelers team last week, although they probably deserved to get the point spread cover, the Eagles. But, of course, the late touchdown backbreaker with 2 minutes to go, Roethlisberger to Claypool made that a 9-point game and got the money for the Steelers in that game, laying 7. You probably deserved a better fate if you were on Philadelphia last week. I'm not comfortable laying 7.5 with Baltimore here. Maybe below 7, I'm more interested in Baltimore. I'm not saying I'm going to take Philly, but I've got concerns here with laying over a touchdown in this game with the Baltimore Ravens. The problem is, though, again, Philly's offensive line has got the same issues Cincinnati's did last week, and we saw Baltimore just tee off on an offensive line that's plagued by injury. Lane Johnson, is he going to be back this week? We never know with that guy. Some games he's in, some games he's out. And Baltimore got a really strong pass rush last week, 27-3. But again, I didn't think they were great in that game. Lamar Jackson wasn't really a huge difference maker for them last week in the game. He wasn't really making the plays that we're normally used to seeing from him. That's a concern. To me, it's at less than 7. I've got more interest in Baltimore. At 7.5, not so much now in this game. It's probably the slightest of leans for me to Philadelphia, but it's probably not going to be a game that I end up getting involved with from a betting standpoint when it's all said and done. Totals wise, this game could be an under, to be honest with you, in this one. 47.5, 48. Pretty high total with Philadelphia with offensive line issues. Baltimore's defense has been pretty good the last couple of weeks, but Baltimore's offense hasn't necessarily been putting the pieces all together the last couple of weeks against Washington and against Cincinnati. Again, a lot of those points came off defensive scores and turnovers from the Bengals that gave the Baltimore Ravens a shorter field to work with. So from a total standpoint, I lean under with Baltimore and Philadelphia. Cincinnati and Indianapolis. Speaking of Joe Burrow and the Bengals, here they are with the next game on this Sunday breakdown. Indianapolis, 7.5, 8-point favorites. The total 46.5 in this game. Look, I'm not laying more than a touchdown with Phillip Rivers and the Colts. There's some alarming things here with the Colts that we need to talk about. First of all, the offense. Phillip Rivers is looking worse by the week. I mean, that interception at the beginning of the third quarter against Cleveland, which completely just ruined the chances, I think, for the Colts in that game, was inexcusable. It was a brutal decision. It was a horrible throw into the flat that had no shot, none, zero, of being completed to his receiver. It was a terrible decision by him. He's gotten worse each of the last 2 weeks against Chicago and Cleveland. That's it, and eventually it's going to catch up to Indy. It didn't catch up when you played a bad Minnesota team. It didn't catch up when you played a horrendous Jets team. But now that you're going to start playing some better competition, it's going to show up. Now, is Cincinnati better competition? I don't know. But the Colts offense is not an offense I want to lay more than a touchdown with. And maybe I'm being stubborn. I would honestly lean to Cincinnati. And I know I lost with Cincinnati last week, but Joe Burrow and that offense, if you can somehow have better offensive line protection, which I think might be more doable. The Colts pass rush isn't quite as there as the Baltimore pass rush. Joe Burrow, I think, has got the opportunity to maybe have a better opportunity to have a clean pocket, be kept upright, and be able to make some plays down the field against the Colts. And the Colts defense has to be talked about. Look, you played Jacksonville, you played Minnesota, you played the Jets, you played the Bears. 4 anemic offenses for the most part. Jacksonville is actually a capable offense, and they gave up 27 and lost that game. But Minnesota's offense is underachieved. The Jets are the Jets. And then Chicago with Nick Foles, they gave up only 11. They finally faced a good offense and good quarterback last week, and it was not good for the Colts defense. They gave up 32. Baker Mayfield did whatever he wanted throwing the football against that Colts team, defensively and offensively right now. With the Indianapolis Colts, they are not a team I'm comfortable laying more than a touchdown with at all. Cincinnati plus the points for me in this game if I'm going to get involved in it. Green Bay, Tampa Bay, as we go to the 4. Actually, we'll go to Denver, New England, even though it's down the rotation because it's the last 1 o'clock game. New England, 10-point favorite, 45.5 the total. It looks like we're going to have the starting quarterbacks of both teams back on the field and starting for their respective teams. Cam Newton for New England, expected to be back. Drew Lock expected to be back for the Denver Broncos. That is definitely good news for both of these teams going into this rescheduled game between the Patriots and Broncos. We're going to have to wait and see how it goes here. But, lots of question marks. I mean, lots of downtime. This is a very, very, very tough game. It's not one I have any interest in getting involved in. I'm staying far away from this game. Denver's offense on the road in New England, I don't trust them. They are getting a lot of points, but that's also why I don't love New England here in this game. They're laying 9.5, 10. They've been off on a long layoff now. How are they going to be able to handle this in this first game back? Really, really tough. I mean, I think New England wins the game, but you can't even tease New England down because, again, if you're going to do an NFL teaser, the best highest positive expectation teaser bet you can make is teasing a favorite of 8.5, 8 or 7.5 down to below a field goal, or teasing an underdog that's +2, +2.5 up above a touchdown. You can't even do that with New England. It doesn't even make sense from a teaser strategy standpoint to get involved here with New England in this game. So it's a really, really tough game. It's one that of all the games, to be honest with you, on this card, this is the one that I said early in the week, you know what, no need to bet it. It's going to be a real tricky game. And again, Denver's offense on the road against this New England defense, which has actually been pretty good this season. I don't know if I necessarily trust them to get the job done. Again, New England probably wins the game, might have a chance to cover as well, but I don't love laying double digits here with New England with all the scenarios surrounding their team going into this one. All right, let's go to the 4 o'clock games now. We've got a couple. New York Jets, Miami Dolphins. Miami, 9.5 point favorites here, 47.5 the total in this game, Jets and Dolphins. Jets are unbackable, and I cashed a ticket with Arizona last week against them, and it's not like Arizona played great last week against the Jets. I mean, they were 6.5, 7-point favorites, but the Jets have been that bad. Okay, they've been absolutely brutal. Their defense stinks. They can't get a stop. They can't stop the run. Their secondary is horrendous. Joe Flacco's not the answer. If you saw Joe Flacco yesterday, completely immobile in the pocket, not able to, and actually missing some open throws at times as well. Not great from Joe Flacco. I can't back the Jets. The problem is you're also now got to ask Miami to lay 9.5. And I think there's been a power rating and point spread adjustment in the Dolphins after everybody saw just how impressive they were in kicking the San Francisco 49ers ass last week, which was an impressive win. But let's not forget the fact that San Francisco's had cluster injuries at receiver, cluster injuries on the defensive line, Richard Sherman and a couple others out in the secondary. That is a mash unit of a team right now, especially on defense, and Miami picked it apart. And it was a great performance, but I think the San Francisco health or lack of it was just as big a factor in Miami playing a good football game last week. So, this is, again, a point spread error that Are we really ready to trust Miami as almost a 10-point favorite? This is not, Green Bay. This is not New England. This is not Kansas City laying this kind of number. This is the Miami Dolphins laying 9.5, which speaks volumes about the Jets and how bad they've been at 0-5 straight up and 0-5 against the spread. Can you imagine that the Jets are 0-5 against the spread? Like they are getting a ton of points every week, even against bad football teams, and they have still failed to cover a point spread this year. Adam Gase has to go. I think the players have completely given up on this guy, and they should give up on him. He's an inept moron of a head coach. That's the way it's always been with him. The Le'Veon Bell situation, I'm sure players look at that and say, geez, I wish we could have our release granted from this inept organization and this inept head coach like Le'Veon Bell did. If you want to get involved in this game, if you gave me a free bet in this game, I'm laying the points with Miami. I'm absolutely laying the points with Miami before having any interest getting involved in the New York Jets right now. But again, we're talking about Miami in a point spread range that is very, very rare for them, and not a point spread range and a roll, a point spread roll, as a greater than touchdown favorite. It's not one that I necessarily have the utmost trust in them in. But I'll tell you right now, if I would lay the points with Miami in a heartbeat in this game before I would ever consider taking the New York Jets. Green Bay, Tampa Bay should be a great matchup here. We know the storyline is Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for the last 10 to 15 years going head to head. Green Bay, how about the money they're taking? Tampa Bay opened a 2.5-point favorite. We're now seeing pick'em. We're now actually seeing Green Bay favored by a point in a lot of spots. We've seen a flip of favorites here in this Bucs-Packers game. The total 55.5, 56, pretty much across the board in this one. Should be a really interesting game. I agree with the line move here. I am liking what I'm seeing out of the Green Bay Packers so far. And even with the Devontae Adams injury the llast couple of weeks, 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread. How can you argue that? The Packers have looked very, very solid to this point in the season. Tampa Bay losing to Chicago, I thought they were very sloppy. Penalties continue to be a little bit of an issue here for the for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just made a lot of mistakes in that game, holding penalties. It's one of them just drove Tom Brady so crazy with anger last Thursday against Chicago that he was caught on camera, just absolutely, tearing a strip off his offensive lineman and his teammates on that side of the ball. He wasn't happy about that. It's been an up and down sort of start for Tampa Bay, 3-2 this season. The wins coming against the Denver Broncos, the Carolina Panthers, and the LA Chargers. And let's not forget the LA Chargers game. They probably should have lost that game. I mean, they were behind big early, and that's a concern. And I mentioned on Twitter about Drew Brees and the fact that he's kind of lost his ability to throw a really big, accurate, deep ball. We're starting to see that with Brady. I mean, a lot of this offense with the Bucs so far, it's been dink and dunk. It's been not necessarily stretching the field a ton. And that's definitely something you got to be leery of going into this game with the Packers and the Bucs. I agree with the line move. I mean, I like what I'm seeing here from this Green Bay team. I know Tampa Bay's had the extra prep time, having not played since last Thursday night. But again, a team that was really reeling with offensive injuries going into that Thursday night game last week against the Chicago Bears. You look at that injury report here this week. Has it really gotten all that much better? Not necessarily. Mike Evans with the sprained ankle, questionable. Leonard Fournette, questionable. We know Chris Godwin missed the last 2 games with a hamstring, questionable. Gronkowski's been battling a shoulder injury that has him on the injury report. We know O.J. Howard is out indefinitely with that ruptured Achilles tendon. Scotty Miller's been battling hip and groin injuries. Jason Pierre-Paul now is dealing with a knee injury. They've already lost Vita Vea for the season, a key defensive lineman for them as well. This is a injury-riddled team right now, and you can understand why the betting markets are reacting the way they are right now. This is not a healthy football team at this point in time, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and all Green Bay has done is win games and cover point spreads so far this season. Minnesota, Detroit, New Orleans, Atlanta. Now, you can argue 3 of those teams not very good. Minnesota, Detroit, Atlanta. Those aren't really great teams, but they did beat New Orleans, down there in the Superdome, 37-30 on Sunday night a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, it would be Green Bay for me. Be careful now of getting on this bet a little too late because we've seen already a 3-point move toward the Green Bay side, but I agree with the movement in this game. Lean over the total as well. But again, 55, it's gone up a bit. I think if you can get it below 56, it's probably still worth an overplay. But again, with the injuries on offense for Tampa Bay, that does concern me a little bit. We did see that offense struggle to finish drives a bit against Chicago's defense, although I don't think Green Bay's defense is anything like Chicago's defense. And that's still the one worry moving forward with the Packers. I've still got question marks about them on the defensive side of the football. I certainly like the way they've been able to get a pass rush at times, but they are not a team that I trust to stop the run. We'll see if Bruce Arians, who likes to throw the football, has the mental wherewithal to say, you know what, I better feed Ronald Jones and run the football a lot here in this game, because if he does, he's going to keep Brady in more manageable down and distance situations. And in theory, the Bucs should be able to run the football here against Green Bay, because most teams have been able to have success running the football against what's been a very weak Green Bay run defense going back to last year. All right, next game on the NFL slate. We're down to the last few games now. It's the Sunday nighter. Yeah, the LA Rams and the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday Night Football. LA Rams 3.5 point road favorites, 51.5, 52 the total in this game. There has been a line adjustment, no question. I mean, San Francisco was a 9-point favorite at home against Miami last week. And now all of a sudden, after that brutal blowout loss to the Dolphins, here they are, a home underdog of 3.5 points against the Rams. And yet I still don't know if that adjustment is enough, because the 49ers are in a world of hurt. I mean, their defense is mangled. It is a mash unit. Look at the injury report for the 49ers. Look at the injury report last week. Look at it again going into this week. Who's going to suit up for them on the defensive side of the football? And we weren't seeing Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense or Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense hanging 40-plus points on the Niners last week. That was Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Miami Dolphins offense hanging 40-plus points against this San Francisco defense. And the week before that, the Eagles haven't had many good offensive games this year. Well, they finally had one against San Francisco the week before. Back-to-back losses, as back-to-back straight-up losses as favorites of a touchdown or more for the San Francisco 49ers in their last 2 games. And now you're finally starting to see the odds makers adjust. And the betting markets, too, have soured on San Francisco. There's no question about that. But to me, you could argue, and I understand, and I know there are people out there that I've talked to that say, oh, there's value now on San Francisco. I think now the bottom's fallen out. There's good point spread value. There's the adjustment's been made, and now there's value on the Niners. To me, this team is just too banged up, too screwed up right now that I can back them, even if they are getting a better number. And look, defensively, I don't even know if they're getting anybody back this week. I mean, I'm looking at it. It's looking dicey at best. I mean, this is unbelievable. Quan Alexander, high ankle sprain, questionable. Zeke Ansah out indefinitely on defense. We know Nick Bosa, torn ACL, is gone indefinitely. D Ford out indefinitely. Those are the 2 guys they miss on that defensive line, Bosa and D Ford, not to mention Quan Alexander, a great linebacker, Zeke Ansah, the defensive end. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Emmanuel Mosley, DJ Jones, Dante Johnson, as I mentioned, Richard Sherman in the secondary, Kayvon Williams in the secondary, out indefinitely. Like, who are that? Solomon Thomas out on IR due to a knee injury. Who the hell's suiting up for this team on defense? And you don't want to be this thin on the defensive side of the football against the LA Rams right now. And the way Sean McVay is scheming and game planning this offense right now, it's been really a thing to behold. It's been impressive to watch. Just the scheming, the different formations, keeping defenses off balance. Sean McVay's been a master of that so far this season for the Rams. Jared Goff's playing some pretty good football. You know, they had the one bad offensive game against the Giants a couple weeks ago, it really made the Rams mad. You could hear it in Jared Goff and some of the players. We didn't like the way we played, even though we won that game against the Giants. We thought our offense was not very good. It took a step back. And boy, they made amends for it with their performance last week, albeit against a bad Washington team. But their offense was very, very impressive. Look, I know there's been an adjustment, and believe it or not, San Francisco was a 3-point favorite in this game before last week's results. Before the loss to Miami, San Francisco was a 3-point home favorite in this game on the look-ahead line last week, and now they're a 3.5-point underdog. So that's a significant adjustment, and I still don't think the adjustment is enough. I'm on the Rams here, 3.5. You can't expect a team, especially in a season like this when there's already been players injured, players opting out, players dealing with COVID situations as well across the league. This is not the time to be shorthanded. And teams are paying the price when they're battling key absences. And again, Jimmy Garoppolo was rushed back, and he was not very good last week. We'll see if he's able to play. It looks like he's going to be back as the starting quarterback despite the high ankle sprain. But again, do you want a wobbly, hobbled Jimmy G under center against a stiff, dominant pass rush with one of the best pass rushers in the NFL in Aaron Donald leading the way for the Rams? I don't know. I mean, that guy couldn't get out of trouble last week when the pass rush was on from Miami. Now you're facing a pass rush that's at least 5, if not 10 times better with what the LA Rams can do from a pass rushing perspective with that defensive front. So I don't know if, we could see Garoppolo struggle again, and make the same mistakes and bad turnovers and inability to get out of the pocket when it collapses, just like we saw last week. I just think it's bad matchup all around and bad timing to be facing this Rams team. And Sean McVay and the Rams have been just money machines on the road. I mean, Sean McVay and the Rams are on this incredible point spread run on the road. And if not for giving up the game-winning touchdown to Buffalo a few weeks ago, they would have been, I think, cashing 10 or 11 in a row on the road, ATS. I mean, that's how good they've been away from home. So I like the Rams here laying 3.5. If you can get anything -4 or better, I would still take it. I think the Rams can win this game by a touchdown, maybe even a little bit more than that. Just too many injuries to me for the San Francisco 49ers team. It's just hard to envision a team being able to compete with all the injuries they've got. All right, the 2 games on Monday. Remember, 2 games on Monday. We have a Monday doubleheader. First game, 5 o'clock Eastern, Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills. Kansas City, 3.5-point road favorites, 57.5 the total in this game. Buffalo coming off the disappointing performance against Tennessee on Tuesday night earlier this week. Now you got to play the defending Super Bowl champs, and you got to play them off their first loss of the season against Las Vegas last Sunday. Obviously, they're catching the Chiefs at a tough time. That didn't look like a Kansas City offense last week. I mean, they couldn't get anything. It was really stunning to see it in the third quarter and fourth quarter against the Raiders last week. That Chiefs offense really was stuck in mud. 3 and out. They couldn't get any drives going, any rhythm going. You do got to give the Raiders defense credit, but it was just stunning to see the Chiefs just spinning their wheels offensively, which you almost rarely ever see from them. But it happened for them against the Las Vegas Raiders. But I think that's going to have this still what's a very well-oiled machine of an offense, very much focused, motivated, and ready to get back on track. And they might have the ideal defense on the other side to get back on track against, because this Bills defense, it's declined. I mean, and I know there was a couple key injuries. Tre'Davious White being out was a difference maker. He is a game breaker on that Bills defense. He is one of the better corners in the league. And Josh Norman was just picked on and just absolutely picked apart by Tennessee throughout that game without Tre'Davious White on the field. That's definitely an injury that you need to monitor going into this game Monday night. Again, it's still a few days away. But if you're the Bills and you don't have Trey White in there on the field against this potent, explosive Chiefs offense, that could be a whole lot of trouble for this Buffalo defense going into this game. From a side perspective, look, I'm not going against KC off a loss. I am not. It doesn't happen very often. This is still a team that even with that loss, what are they now? 13-1 straight up, 12-2 against the spread, their last 14 games. And finally, it caught up with them against Las Vegas. But In this kind of spot with them off the loss and a Buffalo defense that has regressed this season, it's also battling a couple of key injuries. I would be Kansas City minus the points for me in this game. I might end up. I certainly will pull the trigger on Kansas City if this gets down to 3, even at 3.5, the current number. It would be the Chiefs or nothing for me. And I have bet this over the total already. I knew this total had to go up. It opened 53. It opened 55, and it's gone up to 57.5 here. And it might even go higher before Monday. This game, like 31-28 gets you an over in this game. 35-28 gets you over the total. I could easily see this game getting into the 60s. Buffalo's offense should be able to do some damage too. Kansas City's defense didn't play well last week, and now you're facing Josh Allen and a Bills offense that's coming off a bit of a erratic game from their standards, but back home they've piled up points this season. I expect them to do that again here. A bounce back game for Josh Allen. He threw 2 uncharacteristic interceptions against Tennessee. I think he'll play better, and I don't think Buffalo's stopping Mahomes and the Chiefs. Again, I don't even think you can remember a time when the Kansas City Chiefs on offense have played 2 bad games in a row. I think they're going to get back on track here. So from a side perspective, it's Kansas City or pass, and I have already bet the over in this game, and even at 57.5, the current number, I still think there's value. I see 35-28, 35-31, even 31-28. That gets you over the total here. That gets you to 59. It would get this game over the total. I think that is more than doable between these two teams on Monday afternoon. All right, and then the Monday night game, the original Monday night game, the game that was scheduled for Monday Night Football all along, Arizona and Dallas. Arizona, 1.5, 2-point road favorites, 55 the total. Obviously, there's been an adjustment in this point spread due to Dak Prescott being out for the season. Dallas probably would have been a slight home favorite in this game had Dak Prescott been healthy, but that's not the case. And it's redheaded stepchild time. It's Andy Dalton time at quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. I said this on the Ian Cameron Sports Report here on the Pub Sports Radio channel earlier this week. You've got to be careful about saying Andy Dalton's garbage and he's inept and he's incapable of being a starting quarterback. Yes, it was ugly for him in the last season or two in Cincinnati. He didn't play well, but his product of not playing well was not just he stunk and he didn't play well. He didn't have much around him. He had A.J. Green and nobody else at receiver. He had a subpar running game. He had a terrible offensive line that had him just running for cover week in and week out. Same Cincinnati offensive line that has struggled early this season to protect for Joe Burrow as well. So there was a lot of things set up for Andy Dalton to fail. At least now with Dallas here, better offensive line, much more skill position talent. When you look at Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Amari Cooper, all of a sudden you've got a nice trio of receivers to work with here. You've got Zeke Elliott and the run game. I know Zeke Elliott, last year wasn't a great year for him, and this year he's not had that big impact you would expect from him, but he's certainly still more of a running threat and more of a threat to produce on the ground than anything Andy Dalton had in Cincinnati in his last couple of years. So he's got more pieces, more talent around him to succeed. Now we're going to really find out if Andy Dalton can still play quarterback and be an effective NFL quarterback. Because again, unlike in Cincy, he's now got pieces around him to be able to make some things happen and be able to at least make sure this Dallas offense can still move the football and put up points. Are they going to explode on offense like they have under Dak Prescott? No. But I still think this can be a Dallas offense that can be capable, can be functional, can still move the ball. Hey, they needed a drive to win the game last week against the Giants, and Andy Dalton delivered that drive and got them in field goal range to be able to win that game. So you've got to give him credit for that. I don't think all hope is lost for the Dallas Cowboys here on offense with Andy Dalton at quarterback. The problem is all hope lost for them on defense, because that was alarming that they struggled so much again last week, the Cowboys on defense, against by far the worst, weakest, most anemic offense they had played so far this season, Daniel Jones and the Giants, who still were able to move the ball against this Dallas defense, which continues to be a disaster, just an absolute embarrassment this season. I think you could say they played at times a little bit better, but just way too many third down conversions, way too many, big explosive plays allowed, not being able to hold to a field goal in the red zone a couple of times, like just some bad defense again from the Dallas Cowboys. And that's a concern for me here. I mean, against what's a very capable Arizona offense, an Arizona offense that, DeAndre Hopkins has been battling through an injury. Kyler Murray had a bad game against Detroit, and even a worse game than that against Carolina. But he bounced back after that, played better, albeit against a bad Jets team last week. And there's still a bunch of weapons on this Arizona team that could really, really do some damage against a Dallas defense that hasn't been able to stop anybody. So just like I think we might see points in the first of the two games on Monday with Kansas City and Buffalo, I think we're going to see points in this game as well. Look, Dallas has gone over the total in every game. Have they not this year? I'm pretty sure they have. Let me just double check on that. But yes, pretty sure we've seen every single Dallas game this season end up going over the total. I don't know if I'm going to trust that to change here moving forward. 4-1 they are to the over. They had one under this season. It was the LA Rams game, the first game of the year. Other than that, you look at the last four Dallas games, 79 points, 69 total points, 87 total points, and 74 total points last week in that 37-34 win against the Giants. 4 straight overs. All of those games getting into at least the 60s. Why can't this game get into the 60s? Why not? And the more I watch Arizona on defense, like their offense, Kyler Murray, Hopkins, Kirk, I think it's capable, and I think they're going to do damage because Dallas hasn't stopped anybody yet. But the Arizona defense hasn't been great. And I thought that Arizona defense would be better coming into this season. It hasn't been. They've given up points to better offenses. They gave up 31 to Bridgewater and the Panthers. They gave up 26 to Matt Stafford and the Lions. Okay, they played the Jets. They held them to 10. Jets have no offense. Dallas will have an offense, even with Dalton. He's capable, and he's got a lot of weapons around him. I think Arizona is going to give up some points in this game as well to the Dallas Cowboys. And worth noting, Chandler, they have not had much of a pass rush. If you watch Arizona, their pass rush has not gotten home this year. Opposing quarterbacks have had too much time in the pocket to throw the football. And now they lose Chandler Jones for the season, one of the guys they rely on in terms of collapsing the pocket and getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. He's now got a torn bicep injury. He's out for the season. There's a couple other injuries too in that defense as well. Rashard Lawrence, as well as Devon Kennard, they're questionable. So there's a cluster injuries on defense, but Chandler Jones is the big one. From a pass rush standpoint, he's a big part of what the force that gives Arizona that ability to get at the quarterback. And they weren't getting consistent pass rush with Chandler Jones on the field. Now, without him, it's going to be even more difficult. So this is one of those games where I think Arizona moves the ball, Dallas can move the ball, and we get over 55 in this game Monday night between the Cardinals and the Cowboys. As far as the side is concerned, I think Arizona wins the game. I don't love it. 1.5, 2. I would lean Arizona. But I think the Dallas in a teaser might be good because I don't think Dallas is getting blown out. And the one thing about the Cowboys, first game without Dak Prescott, with Andy Dalton, I think they try to rally the troops and rally around Dalton, rally around the situation. They finally got their second win with the last second field goal against the Giants last week. I think that's positive momentum for them. I know they're feeling just gutted. Everybody in the Cowboys organization, especially the players that Dak Prescott has lost for the season with that injury, which was a gruesome, awful injury to see it as it was unfolding. But I think you get them rallying around this situation collectively. They're first in the NFC East. Why wouldn't they be motivated and inspired to come out and play hard and play well? It's a terrible division with Philly and Washington and the Giants, and it's absolutely the NFC least this season, but they're first in that division somehow at 2-3. And there's still a lot to play for here for the Dallas Cowboys. And I think they still think they could win this division because of how bad it is, even with Andy Dalton and not Dak Prescott at quarterback. So, it's one of those games where Arizona, I've been burned a couple times now by them against better competition. that I'm not really in love with laying the 1.5, 2 with them on the road. I think Dallas teased up to 8.5. You get them in a 2-team 6-point teaser, and you put another team with that teaser, with Dallas in that teaser. I think that's a good way to go. I can't see Arizona winning this game by more than a touchdown. I think it'll be a close game all the way. Dallas as a teaser option, I think, would be the way to go. But more than anything, just in terms of straight betting this game, side or total, I like over the total here, 55 between Arizona and Dallas. All right, there we go. That is the NFL Week 6 card. Before I wrap up this edition of the Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, couple college games for Saturday. Reminder, we're going to be doing college football previews on Friday's Ian Cameron Sports Report show here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. So make sure you tune in for that. But right now, I'm going to give you a couple of leans for Saturday in college football. I like Duke plus the points in the over against NC State. Duke is now playing a more up-tempo, faster-paced offense. It seems to be working. They put up 600 yards, more than that against Syracuse last week. NC State's undefeated, but now they're favored for the first time. I think they're a little bit overvalued, and I always am interested in Duke as an underdog, and that is the same thing here in this game. Auburn, South Carolina. I'm going to make a case for the home underdog, South Carolina. I don't like what I'm seeing out of Auburn. They were lucky as hell to beat Arkansas last week. Let's be honest, Arkansas got screwed. That should have been a fumble. That never should have stayed Auburn football and allowed them the opportunity to take the lead late in that game. And Auburn on the road laying points with their offense right now. Like, Bo Nix is not impressing me. Their offensive line is not impressing me. South Carolina, I know it was Vanderbilt last week, a terrible team, but they absolutely pummeled Vanderbilt. They played Florida tough in the first game of the season. They played Tennessee tough in a close loss. You know, I kind of like some of the things I'm seeing out of South Carolina. I like Colin Hill at the quarterback spot, and his OC, Mike Bobo, was his head coach at Colorado State. So you have great continuity there. I don't trust Auburn as road favorites. I like South Carolina. They're getting 3.5 in that game. And I'll give you one more from the college slate on Saturday. Let's talk about, obviously, Georgia and Alabama, the big game, 4.5. This is not a best bet of mine, but I agree with the line move to Georgia. You know, you're going to give me the better defense catching points. I'm interested. Alabama's defense fired their defensive coordinator. Charlie Strong is going to take over that position. And you've got Nick Saban dealing with the COVID-19 infection. He's not going to be on the sideline. He's not going to be involved to coach this game at all. The rule is, when you come down with COVID-19 as a member of the coaching staff, even if you're the head coach, you can't have any communication during the game with your players or the other members of your coaching staff. So all of these external, off-the-field things going on with Alabama, their head coach infected with the coronavirus, firing their defensive coordinator, and you got to prepare for a really good Georgia team. It's just a lot of moving parts for Alabama. You know, the one concern is Stetson Bennett. Is he a good enough quarterback at this stage to go into Alabama and hang in there with the Crimson Tide? But it's a Crimson Tide defense that's not been great and as good as their offense. And Mac Jones in the offense looks phenomenal, no question. And it's going to be a great test for the Georgia defense. But, you know, Alabama's offense has feasted on a lot of weak defenses so far. Ole Miss, A&M's defense has been shredded so far. Missouri's defense is not very good. That's who Alabama's played so far. This is going to be by far, not even close, the best defense Alabama's faced this season. Let's see how they handle it. I don't like the situations off the field. So again, it's not going to be a strong play. It's not going to be a top play. It's not going to be a best bet. But I took Georgia when it was 5.5. It's down to 4.5, and I still like it. As long as you can get it above a field goal. In the big SEC showdown on Saturday night, it would be Georgia for me, plus the points. And Alabama, by the way, when they've been this short favorite role of less than a touchdown, they've not been good. Straight up or ATS. Everybody thinks, wow, you're getting a great point spread bargain here on Alabama. Are you? Again, less than a touchdown when they've been favored by less than a touchdown. They've got a losing straight up and ATS record in recent seasons. So be careful with that. Regardless, I like Georgia here a little bit. Plus the points in the big showdown against Alabama. And with that, that's a wrap for Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy for Thursday, October 15th. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. We're doing this show every Thursday live at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're tuning in to the Ian Cameron Sports Report daily here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel, Monday to Friday. Tomorrow's show on Friday, we'll do a full NFL and college football weekend preview. And we'll talk about some other games as well on the Saturday college football card, as well as the Sunday NFL card on the Ian Cameron Sports Report for Friday. So make sure you join me every Thursday for Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, and also Monday to Friday here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel for the Ian Cameron Sports Report. Thank you to everyone in the chat for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Good luck with all of your NFL and college football wagers. And I'll be back with you next Thursday, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, as we do it all over again with another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games, and good luck.